Bam.
This is Hal Eisner, and you're watching the Break It Down show. Hey there.
This fun. Hal and I have been visiting, waiting to start, and I thought let's just start a few minutes early since I normally start a few minutes after the hour. This will be fun for us to get a chance to get rolling fast here. The accidental 58-year career. All right, so I'll bite on that. Why was it an accident?
Well, accidents are more than one thing by definition. An accident can
Yeah.
be a car crash. An accident can be something inadvertent that changes the course of your direction. And when I was in high school, a local radio station in Dallas, Texas had a contest. And the contest was send in a postcard. Tell us why you want to report your high school football score on Friday nights. Well, son of a gun. I was in the high school band and I played saxophone and I marched during the games and I was at the games. And I thought, you know what? This is kind of a fun thing to do. I'll just send in a postcard and see if they pull my name out of a box. And they did. And that was sort of an inadvertent thing that if I hadn't paid attention to it, I might be a lawyer in Texas right now. But instead, I ended up following a course in broadcasting, sort of a trail, a journey that I didn't plan on. My career choice was going to be go to college, go to pre-law, go to law school. Don't know what kind of law I was interested in at the time, but I just thought that might be a good career. And yet, broadcasting kind of presented itself in the form of send in a postcard and see if you'd like to report the high school football score. They pulled my name out of a box. I won. That's why you and I are talking right now.
I have a bit of an accidental career too, but kind of in the reverse direction. I was trying to become a broadcaster. I had a degree in mass communications with a focus in TV and radio broadcasting, and could not find a job. I sent in my tape everywhere. I sent in cards. I talked to people. I tried to make connections, and I could not find any gig at all. And so I had to do something. So I became a spy instead. I went the other direction. I became a spy.
Really?
And then realized that reporting and spying are the same thing because, and this will resonate with you. I have to know.
Hey, wait a minute. Hold on. I hate to turn this interview on you, but I want to hear a little more about that because that is not something I expected to hear you say.
Yeah, it's a true thing. I tested well, and they're like, "Why don't you either pick medical or intelligence?" And I'm like, "I don't want to be inside all the time." They're like, "Why don't you be a counterintelligence agent then?" And so, yeah, I became that, and then I deployed a lot.
Where were you? CIA, FBI? Where did you work?
Army. The Army.
Army.
Yeah.
Okay.
The Army has its own counterintelligence.
Well, thank you for your service.
Oh well, thanks. Yeah. And so it just I never knew I was going to join the Army. It just happened. I wasn't even particularly good at being in the Army. I was good at war, but I wasn't good at like, oh yes sir, oh shoot, wrong hand. Yeah, like
right.
I knew how to do all the soldiering stuff, but everybody kind of knew I was putting on an act. Like, so yes, my boots are shiny, but you know what? Yeah, I don't think you cared when you did it. You're like, you're right. I did it because I was supposed to.
Well, Brian, to get back to your point, broadcasting can be a very challenging career to find your path, and it has been for a lot of people. But there are ways to do that. It happened to be that it presented itself to me, and so my little high school football score reports on Friday night dominoed into taking the job that the guy who was collecting those reports at KLIF Radio in Dallas had when he moved on. And then when I went to college, I talked to the administrators there and wanted to find a little side job. And they knew somebody at a local radio station and they knew somebody at a local TV station. These were background jobs, not in front of the camera or on mic. And you know what? It's just one thing led to another. And before you know it, I was in this career.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I was saying earlier too, the similarities between our jobs. Like if you walk up to any kind of calamity or any kind of tense emotional moment, you still have to do the job, and you are communicating. Like you don't just get to have an avatar, like especially here in LA or Dallas, there's a lot of people and things you're communicating with, you got to be clear and on the point. Same thing for me if I'm writing an intelligence report on the things that I found that day. I don't know who the president might read it, like legitimately, right? So I'm trying to decide, how do I help the immediate folks, but how do I also help folks like I need them to understand that I'm speaking clearly, and I have to have a powerful network. All of that stuff is news reporting.
I see.
Yeah.
Well, I think that broadcasting, particularly broadcast journalism, is a noble career. I think that, those of us who have learned journalism, who have become journalists, and who know what we're supposed to do ethically and responsibly, we are first responders. Yeah. We're there for the public, and we're there to get information that you can't get because you're at work during the day. Kind of like the old thing about when you were in school, there was a student council representative in your homeroom. And they would go to a little meeting while you went to math class and then science class. And then when you came back to homeroom later in the day, they would tell you what happened at the student council meeting. Yeah. And that's kind of what, a reporter does. You go to work, I go to work, but I'm going out there trying to find out the information you want, because you're wondering why the helicopters are going overhead down the street. You're wondering why sirens are going by your office as you're working during the day. And so that's what we do. We report news. And I also had 8 years of working on a Sunday show called Fox 11 News In Depth that I enjoyed very much. It was my chance to be in the studio once a week and anchor something, as opposed to just being in the street every day, which I also loved very much. And I retired in 2025 after 43 years on TV and 15 years in radio, 58 years total.
Why retire? I mean, obviously you loved it. You did it forever.
Well, because, and I'm not shy of my age.
Yeah.
I've been your age several times. And I'm not shy about saying that I'm right now 76. And when I hit 75 in December of 2024, I thought, there are a couple of things that are resonating with me. One is something a high school friend told me at a reunion. He said, don't wait too long because you don't want to go hiking with a walker.
Yeah.
And then another friend said, we all have a certain currency, and this applies to you and everybody else who might be joining us. We all have a certain currency called time left, but we don't know how much we have in the bank.
Yeah.
So if there are other things you want to do, you got to figure that out. And I wanted to travel. There were other things I wanted to do. I wanted to write a book. I was working on one. I wanted to kind of get that out there. And so on January 2nd of 2025, I popped up in the newsroom and I gathered everybody together. And I said, you know what? On January 2nd, well, it was actually before that. I said, on January 2nd, I'm going to retire. And January 2nd was the 43rd anniversary of my first day on television in Los Angeles. So I kind of bookended it. And the company was amazing to me. And we talked about the notion of stepping down as opposed to just turning off the light switch and ending a career cold turkey after so many years. And so I continued my Sunday show for another 6 months. And that was kind of a nice way to wean off of work. And I recommend that to anybody who works. If you're going to retire, find a way to wean off of it as opposed to just cold turkey, drop it off.
Yeah. Weaning and walking. Get out there and enjoy the life that you have left too, right? Yeah.
Well, we want to think we have a lot. We want to think we have a lot of life left. We don't want to think of it in terms of, I've got a couple innings left. Let's make the most of it. But the thing is that while you're healthy and while you can get out there and enjoy your life and do things and travel and go to concerts and do all kinds of cool stuff, do it. Yeah. If you're of age, do it.
Yeah. I'm 56. I'm not the oldest guy in the world, but I'm older than most now, and you're right. My special someone and I, we're going to go travel more starting right now because hey, I don't need a walker, and we both have had close calls with things. And as you know, your 60s aren't healthier than your 50s, and your 70s aren't healthier than your 60s for most folks. At least that's what you can't count on it. So we're going to get out and go do things. So that's great counsel for all of us. And the other thing too is I have a lot of friends who are retiring or have retired, and they struggle to know like what else they do because their job became a lot of who they are, and that growth period is challenging. So the slow roll out to retirement for you sounds like a good plan. How do you define who you are and what you do day to day? I'm always going to work is the thing we hear all the time, but it's not that you sit around and just take naps all day, right? Like you are busy. I mean, you and I both are like we were trying to get together last week. I got caught in a traffic accident thing,
Yeah.
and you said, "Well, I'm out of town," right? So it took us a little bit of time even just to book back with this. So I know you're busy. How do
I
you
mean,
how do
are
you
you
manage
talking
the
about?
new you?
Are you talking about how you identify yourself in retirement, or how you identify
Yeah.
yourself in the work environment?
Well, I think to retire, you need to have something to occupy your time, and if your time was always occupied by work, how do you become this new person who doesn't have to go back to the job? Whatever it is, laying tile or. My dad struggled to retire. He's an architect, and he's like, "This is the last job." That was like 25 jobs ago.
Yeah.
He's always doing
Well,
it.
I think it's an interesting question you raise.
Yeah.
I sort of have described retirement as living in a bowl of jello.
Okay.
You have a structured life. You go to work, you do the job, you make the phone calls, you do the research, all that, it's very structured. When you retire, all of a sudden you're living in a world that's not structured. And you get up when you want, you do what you want, unless you structure it. And so I feel like so far for the past year, and actually maybe a little over 6 months, because I continued that Sunday show for a while, it's been a
Mhm.
little bit like a long vacation.
Mm.
And I haven't minded that feeling of a long vacation. I've taken advantage of it. I've gone to some different places. Not all the places I want to go to. I've got a big old bucket list,
Yeah.
but I've done some traveling. I have a couple of guitars in the other room. One's an acoustic, one's electric, and the only thing I still know how to play is Johnny Rivers' "Secret Agent Man," and I want to learn how to use those guitars a little bit better. And I take art
Yeah.
classes once a week, and I'm learning
Yeah.
how to draw things.
Yeah.
And what I'll do is on my social media, and I'm all over social media. I've got Facebook, Instagram, all these sort of things. But I'll post some of these things that I'm drawing just so people can kind of see what I'm doing. I'm pretty active on social because to me, there's a couple of big things about social media. One, to me, it's a window. It's a window
Okay.
on the world, and it's an opportunity to see what everybody else is up to and
Yeah.
to share with everybody else what you're up to. The other thing is back in 2021, and you may be planning to ask me, so I'll just sort of jump the curb here. I was hit by a drunk driver while working. And my cameraman and I were on Hollywood Boulevard doing an interview with the CEO of a bus company, of a tour bus company, talking about the end of the pandemic. And I had 6 fractured ribs. Um, I had a fractured knee, fractured tibia plateau, in the hospital for a couple of months. Cameraman had a lot of injuries, and there were tourists that got hit too. In the book, there are pictures, but also if you just Google my name, put in the word crash or accident, you'll see these pictures. And it was pretty horrific. Got hit pretty hard. I flew through the air, apparently, according to the video cameras that were in the area. And it was impactful in a lot of different ways. But I think that, the bottom line was that if it hadn't been for social media, I don't know that I would have recovered as quickly. Social media, really, the folks out there lifted me up and my cameraman, and they made me feel like you're going to make it, Hal. You're going to be okay. Now, the sense of humanity started when I was laying face down on the ground, and people were circling me with their smartphones, taking images, and which is fine because I would do that every day anyway. And they were rooting me on. They were saying, "Don't move. You might have broken bones. Be careful. I didn't know these people. I didn't know if they were neighbors, tourists, people who were homeless. They were just,
Yeah.
it was humanity. And that's what I felt in social media as well. That the cyberverse, whatever you want to call this, really
Yeah.
came out and really supported me. And I wanted to show everybody that I was going to get out there, I was going to heal, I was going to get back in front of the camera, and I was going to be okay. And I wasn't going to let somebody who had been drinking at 3 o'clock in the afternoon
Right.
end my career early. It wasn't going to happen. It was going to be on my terms. And so I think for whatever criticism there is of social media, I think there's a bright spot there too.
Sure. Sure. Yeah, of course, right? You're still talking about the good elements are amplified as much as the bad elements are, right? So
Yeah.
we have a chance to balance things out.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way to see it. And the accessibility aspect of it for folks who weren't capable of having an outside, for whatever reason, can have a window to the outside world and interact and have a better life than before. That's for sure. I think.
You know,
Hey, I'm realizing. Go ahead. Go ahead.
one example. It used to be that if somebody wanted to write me and tell me I didn't like your story,
Yeah.
or I did like your story, which was less
Right.
often than I didn't like your story,
Sure.
it would come in the form of an envelope with a stamp on it. And one envelope with a stamp on it sometimes to me represented a couple of hundred people who might feel the same way, but just
Right.
didn't take the time to send a note. When social media came about, I'd hear from people all the time whether they liked or didn't like my stories.
Right.
And it became a more focused point of examination of what do people like out there? What am I doing right? What am I not doing right?
Hmm.
And the engagement with the viewers really changed, and I really loved it.
What the engagement part is great. How active are you in the engagement? How accessible are you? How much do you exchange and create relationships with folks from the social media world?
All right, let me rephrase it. So how engaged am I on social media?
Well, yeah, I mean, like it's one thing to engage and look and watch, but are you actually having conversations? Are you developing friendships, relationships with people through the social media portal?
All true.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In other words, I expect that because of social media, you and I are going to become BFFs.
yeah. I mean, we live in the same area, right? Why wouldn't we get together and go get a sandwich or
But,
something?
but no, I have developed friendships and I have developed what you might call acquaintances.
Sure,
And,
sure.
I have people that, I'll just mention right now that on March 4th in Pasadena at Vroman's bookstore, we're going to have a book signing, 7
Nice.
o'clock. And, I suspect there'll be people from social media that will come out and I'll get to meet some people face to face in some cases for the first time because of social media, because it gives the opportunity to extend that invitation firsthand.
Right. I'm going to put this link up for Romans right now so you guys can go check it out. In general, they
Thank
have
you.
great book events, everybody. Yeah, of course.
Mhm.
Just a shout out to a nice place to go and take a look at books and also see authors. They do a really, really good job of that. So,
Yeah.
everybody, if you're in the Pasadena area or somewhere close, definitely go check that out. I'll put the link into the notes.
Thank you.
And also, if you weren't already noticing, there's the link for the book right there for Hal's book. You can get that as well. So, Hal's book on Amazon or go to Romans the event and they have a whole schedule of events. You guys know how to work
So
that
let
in.
me let me
There's
tell
that
you
book
about
right
the
there.
cover. Let me tell you about
Please
the
do.
cover. You know, I wanted, excuse me, early morning congestion. I
Yeah.
wanted to have a cover that looked a little different than other covers of broadcast books. They often have a reporter with a camera holding a microphone, which is all good. Nothing wrong with that. But I wanted to be different. I tend to have this creative thing that, I like to find different ways to do things. And so a friend of mine who's a fine artist, a fine art artist, uh, painted this for me. I asked her to try to see if she could do that. We tried all kinds of things. We tried pen and ink, uh, grays, and ended
Mhm.
up with this. This is hand painted. This is an oil painting. And I just love what she did. Her name is Liat Silvera, and she's a terrific artist. And check her out.
Yeah, let's get her on the show. Let's book her and have her come on, and you and I will
There you
we'll
go.
talk to her. All right,
I'm sure she'd
there you
love
go.
to.
We
Yeah.
got a show booked in the future.
There
Does
you go.
is she local to California, or where's she at?
Yeah, she's in LA.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love supporting artists like that. They need a break because they don't often get the letter in the mail with the stamp on it that even says you suck. It's just easier to ignore those guys, and so I love shining a light on them. Hey, I wanted to ask you earlier. You were talking about the requirements of being a reporter, and I would put the word integrity in there. That's certainly how I learned it, and that was amplified in the spy side. Like I have to be above reproach. That to me, from my old man sensibilities, has eroded. A lot of reporters, I was taught like hard news should be almost boring because it's informative about the thing that happened. It's not about your opinion. That was how I was brought up, right? And so when you read hard news, you're like, yeah, okay, I've been informed about this thing. We get a lot more opinion in our news now, and I don't know like where you sit with that. There's a lot of ways to do journalism, but what do you think about the integrity of the news these days?
Well, I would begin by pushing back really hard on you.
Okay.
I don't know of news reporters who are journalists, who are ethical, who get two sources for every piece of information they put out there, who give their opinion. Those are commentators. Yeah. I'm not a commentator. Yeah. And I am on the national board of SAG-AFTRA. I'm in my third term as a union member on the board. And I know broadcasters across Southern California. I know broadcasters across the country. Yeah. And those who are mainstream journalists do not give their opinion. Yeah. We do not give our opinion. I used to hang out with an attorney, Leo Terrell, on a local radio station here once in a while. And he'd have a hard time getting me to say whether I like the weather or not, because I just don't like giving my opinion, because I don't think it's my place to tell you what I think. I think it's my place to tell you what the information is, and you decide what you think. Yeah. And that's my career. Now, let me back that up with a couple of things. One, we live in a world where you have infotainment. Let's go back to the earlier days of radio. There used to be something called the entertainment wheel. You had news on the hour, you had news on the half hour, and you had country music or rock music or whatever on the sides. And sometimes that was talk. It might be a conservative talk radio station. It might be something else, but it was entertainment. When we got to the idea of news talk television, or CNN, MSNBC, Fox, all of these, well, you kind of needed to have some kind of programming besides news story after news story after news story. Yeah. And so what you had was sort of personalities who gave their opinions. Now, opinion making goes way back. I mean, when I was a kid and Walter Cronkite was doing the news, Eric Sevareid was giving his opinion on CBS because he was a commentator. And so you still have commentators in the form of Sean Hannity, in the form of, some of the personalities on MSNBC. They comment on the news. They're not the news reporters. They're not the broadcast journalists. So I don't really know if people, and maybe you do, I don't, who made up a story and gone on the air, radio or television, and put it out there. I mean, I don't know anybody who's done that. Do you?
Boy, I don't know. I guess it determines. It's determined by how you categorize what a journalist is and what a journalist is not.
A journalist is somebody who goes out there, gets information, sources that information. Look, if you have one currency when you're a broadcast journalist or any journalist. That's your credibility. Okay. Yes. You mess up your credibility, you're going to lose your job. Yeah. Not only are you going to lose your job, you're going to lose your career.
Man, you think so, right?
Pretty tough punishments for that. So who the heck is going to do that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it does seem to happen. I mean,
No,
I
it
guess
doesn't happen. What happens is that you have the commentators. Now, I'm not talking about social media where people are talking about the news. I'm
sure.
talking about mainstream broadcasters on your local channels. I'm talking about people who are out there digging, getting the information at City Hall. They're not standing there saying, the mayor today said this. And by the way, this is what I think about it.
Right. Yeah. No, I think you're right that there is a distinction between the two. I just I've seen a lot of opinion in the news.
Well,
And
who? From where?
well, David Muir. How about
Well,
that?
but he gives his opinion. Does he label it?
Yeah, well, he writes it so that it's twisted towards fear. He was talking about that storm in Dallas. Was it 2 years ago? And he talked and he performed it. He's like, there are morgues lining up to be ready to store the bodies.
Well, then
Okay,
my
that's news.
recommendation, if that's your perception of how he performs, my
Yeah.
perception is watch somebody who you prefer.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm just giving you an example. When I saw that, I'm not watching David Muir broadcast since then because
A lot of
I
the
saw
anchors,
the
by the
manipulation.
way, don't write their own stories. They have writers
Sure.
in the newsroom that write their stories. But I just
Yeah.
push back on the notion that there have been, going back to early presidents, tensions between the press and the
Sure. Yeah.
politicians. There are books written about that. You go to Romans or somewhere and look for my book. Go to the section
Yeah.
where it talks about the presidents and the press, and
Oh
you'll see
yeah.
a lot of books about the
Absolutely. Yeah.
relationships between these two sides, because one can put a spotlight on the other one, and
Yeah.
that creates tension. So I
Yeah.
think, and that's as it should be, because the First Amendment is designed to keep the government in check in many
Absolutely.
ways.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
just happen to be a person who and we can agree to disagree. But
Yeah.
if there is a particular individual you think slants things a certain way through their gestures, well, then, maybe that's not the person for you to watch. But I
Yeah.
would say that there's plenty of people out there. It's a buffet of journalistic information. And I
But
would
you're
say
right
there
though.
are
The
people.
integrity piece matters, right? I mean,
It
I source
matters, but it
things.
matters
Yeah.
to your career, because you know what? The next stop after you libel somebody is court.
Yeah. Yeah. When you get things wrong, I mean, and I don't want to just stay on this whole thing the whole time, but when the Ministry of Health from Hamas routinely is lying, and then a news media source goes back to them again and again, and then publishes retractions again and again and again, and we got a problem with folks who do news. And no matter what you think about Hamas versus Israel, retraction after retraction after retraction from the same source, I think you and I have to agree that that's not emblematic of professional journalism.
I would
Okay.
say the retraction is a tool in professional journalism. Let me tell you why.
Okay.
If a mistake is made, if something is not correct, because oftentimes we go out on a story and we'll say information is
Yeah.
sketchy right now. We
Right.
won't make it
Yeah.
up, but we'll say it's sketchy. Um, if information is incorrect, it is incumbent on a journalist to retract, apologize, and correct. That is a
Right.
tool in.
I don't know. All right, so maybe it's me that's frozen, maybe not. If not, hey everybody, it's Pete, on the Break It Down show. And hopefully it's Hal that's frozen and not me. I don't think I'm frozen, but you never know around here. So how y'all doing? Make sure you guys check out the Break It Down show. Hal was making a big point too, and I was really into the conversation, and now I got to figure out where we're at. So let me just do this real quick. Send Hal a text and see if it's he's that's frozen or it's me that's frozen. I don't think it's me. Yeah, it's not me. Anyhow, all right. So we're watching Hal Eisner, talking to him. He's going to be at a book event at Vroman's. It definitely was not me. It was definitely Hal. And so Vroman's bookstore is in Pasadena. I've been there for a couple of events. They have fantastic author events. You guys can check it. In general, go check things out. Get out of your bubble, get off your phone, put this infernal device somewhere else so that you don't have to always be on it and doing things on it. And I think you'll find that there are a lot of wonderful things and people out there that you can engage with. So that's my counsel, whether you want it or not. There it is, and I hope that that you find that to be good counsel, and you find out that you enjoy being out and about amongst the people, because it turns out people are pretty good if you let them be. So I guess the other thing I would say is here's Hal's link for his book, his 48-year career. It's an or hang on, where did that? Oh, there it is, an accidental career. There it is, right there.
Well,
And then
that
there's
was an
Hal.
accidental. That was an accidental interruption.
I know, right when you were like pounding away your point too,
Well,
and
but just to button that up,
yeah,
I
please,
think that we all have the ability and the beauty
hmm
of being able to give our opinions for things,
sure,
because we
sure,
live in a
yeah,
free country and
we
we
do
have a
live in
free speech capability.
yes, we
And
do.
I
That's
think that
precious.
otherwise, we would be living in a different kind of society if we couldn't talk. So
Yeah,
I love the idea that people can give their opinions. And I don't think that your perception is right or wrong. It is a perception.
yeah, yeah, that's
And
true. Yeah,
so I
and I don't
think,
think we disagree
and
really all. Yeah,
but I would also say that my perception is a perception. And so
yeah,
my respecting yours would be the same as yours respecting mine. But I think that,
yeah,
we, as a person who has been through 58 years of a career,
yeah.
I believe that, I have a camp that I do every year in December for
Yes.
those out there who might be interested in journalism. These are college students who are studying journalism and looking to get into the industry. And we just had a camp in December. We'll have another one coming up this December. It's in Malibu Canyon. And
Yeah.
each year I see a new crop of students coming through from universities across the country. And you know what? The last crop in December is very hopeful and promising. And I haven't seen a bunch
That's
of
good.
people that I felt badly about. I think
Oh,
we're
that's
in
good.
good hands. And I
Yeah.
think as long as we have a First Amendment and as
Mhm.
long as we have free speech, we will have purveyors of information. And
Yeah.
the question
Yeah.
is, are the purveyors of information doing the job the right way?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
hope they.
And like, I think that they will. And I think by and large, most of them will go out and do a great job to the best of their ability. And I believe that. And also the independent journalism explosion, as
Yeah,
people have moved away from the old structures. I
yeah.
think that's good too. And honestly, Hal, I don't think we disagree really at all on the integrity of reporters. I may have a flavor for one, you may have a flavor for another. It's that correction piece. And when you go back to the same bad source over and over again and get burned, oh boy, like that's where it really when my
But
journalistic
that's why you
eyes.
get two sources.
Sure. Yeah. 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 And so I mean, again, like I think we agree, right? Like and if you do have a source and you can't reveal them, okay, but most of your sources you should be revealing because these are open
I
things.
think
You
there are
have
times
document.
when you can't reveal a
Yeah.
source. I think there are times when
Absolutely. Yeah.
information is sensitive and whistleblowers and everything else, and you have to
Sure.
protect
Yeah.
the sources.
Let's get into. I wanted to ask you this too, because you were a
Yeah,
young kid in Dallas. You were definitely were the right age to have memories of JFK and the assassination. Do you were you there then, or were you somewhere else?
I was there.
Okay, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts? I mean, all these years later, we've got this whole new tranche of things that have been released. What are your thoughts in general? How has it evolved over these last, gosh, 70, almost 70 years now?
Well, you know, my dad was transferred to Dallas from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in his job when I was 13 years old, and it was the summer before the assassination. And I got to tell you, that was very impactful to me. Um, I'm in school, and the word comes through the PA system from the principal that the president's been shot,
Oof,
and the teacher in my particular classroom, which was a science class, Mr. Hoffrichter, immediately put his head down into his hand like that, and you could feel the sense of depression.
mm,
And I think that radiated throughout at least my classroom. And as we went to the auditorium to watch televisions to see what was going on, that radiated through the school. For the next 4 days, that radiated through Dallas, Texas, which
yeah,
was collectively depressed over what had happened in our own city. Um, it was very difficult, and it was meaningful. Now, I've always wondered about what happened. I've always wondered about the grassy knoll. I've always wondered about the single bullet theory.
Yeah.
Um, but I wasn't old enough to investigate or do
Yeah.
stories
Yeah. Yeah.
about it. I was 13,
Yeah.
so I feel like it was an indelibly difficult mark on our history.
Yeah.
And keep in mind too that as a kid, I was born at the end of Harry Truman's administration. That was a guy with white hair.
Hmm.
I came into the Eisenhower administration as a child. That was a guy with white hair.
Hmm.
In fact, before those two guys with white hair, you had Roosevelt and a couple other guys with white hair. So here
Yeah.
comes John Kennedy, a nice, handsome young guy with dark hair, and it was like a breath of fresh air. You
Mm.
sort of felt like this was this Camelot thing, that this was something brand new, and it was heartbreaking to see
Mhm.
this
Yeah.
happen. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Our Kennedy from Gen X folks was walking down the high school hallway and hearing that space shuttle had blown up, you
yeah,
know, and because we had all wheeled in TVs into the classroom. This is our version of the same thing. And
right.
we were all watching with our mouths because it never occurred to us that this could happen. We always did great things in space. And even when it went bad, we fixed it. And wow. And, we were all watching because the first teacher was going, oh my gosh. And it imprinted us with this horrible thing. And then a short while later, at least at my high school, a girl was murdered on campus by her boyfriend right in front of all her friends. And that also was just this awful thing. So these moments may not be the same in scope, but they for sure impacted my little town in a way that was, dramatic. The shuttle thing it's a national thing, but this up close and personal friends knowing friends who killed friends, it was awful. And so I can only imagine what that was like for you guys.
Well, I think in any generation you have this. You have John Kennedy Jr., you have Princess Diana, you have Elvis Presley,
Sure.
Michael Jackson. I mean, there are
Yeah.
going to be these impactful things that happen in your generation. The assassination of a president is certainly different, but incredibly impactful.
Yeah.
And for those who grew up a little later, the attempted assassination on President Reagan.
Sure.
So, I think that it was tough. It was difficult. A lot of books up here on my shelves that are related to Kennedy because I have an
Mhm.
interest in Kennedy as a result of
Sure.
having all that experience around me.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a it's a crazy thing. But you covered chaos for a living at a lot of times. And wherever something happened, whether it was, in LA is full of stories like that. I mean, we just had a stop what you're doing, watch this car chase thing yesterday, and so there's always something. It's just a place that has a lot of coverage for a lot of crazy things. And then Hollywood is here and all those crazy Hollywood stories. And we could go on all day talking about all the different crazy stories. But what stands out? Like what I'm sure these things are in the book. So which stories did you know you had to write? What stories had to make the cut and be in the book? How about that?
Well, that was hard. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of stories that you know that were meaningful to me, but it's not just the stories.
Mm,
It's it's um it's the moments in stories. See that little guy right there?
yeah. Yeah.
That's Columbine.
Yeah.
That's the little kid
Horrible.
I interviewed at Columbine. That stays with me.
Yeah.
I was covering Hurricane Harvey in Houston, and there was a church that had been shredded by a tornado
Mm,
that came out
mhm.
of the hurricane. And so I went to do a story about the people who were praying in folding chairs outside that devastated church. And I saw a family and I thought, it'd be nice to talk to. So afterwards, my cameraman and I approached them. We talked, mom, dad, and kids. And as we were talking, this young girl, this one,
Okay.
I
Yeah.
could see she was getting emotional,
Hmm.
and she had her hand on her face. What's wrong? What's wrong? And down in the bottom frame there, you can see she hugged me. Now, I didn't know
Yeah.
her. Her folks are standing right next to us, but she hugged me and she's crying. And she said, I was afraid that my parents were going to get killed. And so, what stays with me? Hurricane Harvey,
Sure.
the little girl that I talked to in Hurricane Harvey. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it's the moments that happen in stories that are they stay with you the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you do to deal with that? Because again, spying, same thing. I met people, I call it my book of woe, and it just got so many pages in it where just you can't believe all this misery that you encounter that I can't do anything to help these people. Maybe I can direct some resources towards them, but I no longer own that responsibility. It belongs to somebody in the army or whatever, right? And they may or may not come through. How do you deal with those? Because I know for me that when I go to sleep, those demons wait for me there, and those folks that I've seen, they haunt me for sure.
I think you have to know what your job is, what your responsibility is.
Okay.
In my case, we're first responders. We're like police
Hmm.
officers. We're like
Yeah.
firefighters. Our job is to go in there, extract information, put it out to the public so people know what's going on in their neighborhoods. That's our job.
Yeah.
And somehow, like a police officer, you find ways to distance yourself because it's not you that's having the issue, it's somebody you're trying to help in the moment or talk
Sure.
to in the moment. And so I think that you sort of find ways to shield yourself. Now, do you remember the Jimmy Stewart movie about the rabbit, and he had an imaginary rabbit?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So when I was a kid, there was a toothpaste commercial that boasted of having Gardol, and Gardol was something that was supposed to protect your teeth. I don't
Yes.
know if it was real or not, but
Yeah.
somehow I
Yeah.
adopted the notion of Gardol,
Okay.
and that somehow I was kind of shielded. I mean, I would go to the scenes of these things, fires, riots, protests, earthquakes, whatever it was. But my job was to get information. And, it wasn't to rescue people. It wasn't to do this, that, or the other. It was to get information. And I
Yeah.
think once you know what your responsibility is, you deal with it. You find
Yeah.
ways to deal with that. And sometimes these jobs are very focused. And
Yeah.
I think certainly being a journalist is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's focused. All right. That's for sure. Still though, you cover a lot of tragedy, calamity, and the worst moment in people's lives, and so there has to be a little bit of damage in there because you're not a sociopath or a psychopath. You're
No,
just
but
able
I
to
mean,
compartmentalize.
I empathize. I feel.
Yeah.
But I don't carry it home, go to sleep with it at night. I'm aware of it. I feel for them. I may
Yeah.
stay in touch with them. I'm a human. I'm part of a
Yeah.
community. I
Yeah.
care.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
when I retired, January 2nd, January 3rd, I flew to Florida. January
Mhm.
4th, I got on a cruise ship to Belize. A couple days later, the fires broke out in Southern California.
Uh,
Now,
yeah.
I was having withdrawals because I'm trained to be in the middle of those fires and get information for you.
Right.
That's my job. I
Right.
have the fire gear. I'm trained to do that. I know how to do that. And yet I couldn't do that because I had retired from my job and I was
Right.
out on the ship. Happened to be that there were people on the ship whose kids were losing their homes back in California.
Mm,
So I
right.
shared time with them. And when I got back, because a lot of what we do as journalists in the community is about community. I found a clothing giveaway in South Pasadena. And I started giving away clothes to people who had lost everything
Yeah. Yeah.
because I'm still a community person.
Right.
whether I'm getting paid or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Why is
So
it that
you
the
feel,
these
you
go ahead.
empathize,
Yeah.
but you have a way to contain.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked about the stories that you had to tell, but what stories were great that just there wasn't room in the book, didn't fit in the through line? What didn't make the cut that you wish, or if you're going to write another book, like what didn't
I
make the
think
cut? That's the
I
question.
think when you're writing a book, you're looking at the flow of what you've got. I mean, I wanted to start off and talk about this crash where I was hit by this drunk driver because I
Right.
thought people might want to know more backstory about that. And then I backed into my childhood and I talked about the things that, affected me in childhood. Sometimes we have these fears. I had a fear of heights. I was
Mm.
afraid to go down the fire escape from the third floor when I was a gym class, and I'd get in trouble for not wanting to go down to the blacktop outside and play dodgeball
Yeah.
because I was afraid I was going to fall through the fire escape slats. And you start looking back at the things that shape you, and that's sort of just what you do. You cherry pick as you're going along, and you find these things that sort of define who you are, who you were, and who you want to be.
Yeah.
And of course, there are a lot of stories that don't make a book. Otherwise, this book would be the size of the Encyclopedia Britannica, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But I think that you know you find the things that you think will resonate best about the life you lived. It's a
Yeah.
memoir, and you want to share with people what was it that made you who you were and who you are. And that's how you sort of just pick the things that you think work best. There are stories, obviously, that you might like to tell, but you really don't have the room for it in the book.
Hmm.
So this one's more important than this one, and you sort of make those choices.
Yeah. How has being a reporter changed who you are? I mean, obviously, you've got the whole thing that this is my job and this is not my job, but you gained wisdom. So, what's the result of that work?
I just feel like I am who I am because of who I've been. And I know that sounds like a very kind of like trite statement, but I think that, like the mathematical theory, you are the sum of your parts.
Yeah.
And I feel
Yeah.
like, you know, who I am is really the shape of all the different things I've been through, I've experienced, the people I've known, the stories I've told. I'm so lucky.
Yeah.
I'm such a blessed guy. I mean, we should all be able to say that about our careers. We all ought to be able to say, if I could do it all over again, I'd do it the same way. But you know
Yeah.
what? If I had it to do all over again, I'd do it the same way.
All right. All right. Yeah, isn't that funny that you can look back at the hardest moments, most painful moments? You're like, well, I can withstand that again to get all these wonderful things that I've gathered,
Yeah.
and it kind of frames you for whatever bad thing that happens next. You're like, I've taken all the rest of them. And I think as you age and gain wisdom, you realize that, yes, life is going to kick you in the balls right when you're down and laugh at you. And then as you go to get up, they'll be like, cancer. And you're like, God damn. But we
Yeah.
roll with these things, or we don't, and then that's it. And then you don't have to
But
worry about
there's
it
that old
anymore.
thing about if you fall down the mountain, climb back up again. I really believe that.
Sure, yeah, sure, yeah. You have to, right? Like,
Yeah.
what's the other choice? I mean, there is no other choice. You're compelled to.
Yeah. You
And
know what? Somebody once said it takes a village, right?
mhm,
It does.
yeah,
It
yeah.
takes a,
Everybody needs help, right? At the right time. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And that let's definitely talk about your charity thing again, because that is your work with the youth reporting, all that kind of thing. Talk about that, because Hollywood's full of folks who get criticized for stuff. It's also full of folks who do incredible things to support others. So talk about what you're doing, and we'll go from there.
Well, back in the year 2000, which seems like a very long time ago,
It
uh,
was.
there were a lot of companies that weren't allowing interns to go out in the field because of liability concerns, insurance concerns. And so I was president of the Associated Press Television Radio Association at the time. And I thought, we could do that. We can make it possible for students to experience a news story. Now, what you're about to hear is the only time I will ever say the two words and mean it, fake news.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Okay.
What we did was we created a fake news story. We brought in the LAPD, LA County Fire, Sheriff's
Yeah.
Department, DEA, other agencies, and actors and actresses and special effects makeup artists. And we created a news story for the purposes of mentoring students who were broadcast students through a story in which they could get a video of their work from the weekend and use it to show somebody in a small town who has a small town TV or radio station what they would look or sound like on the air. That's what was missing when corporations decided they didn't want to let interns go back out in the field.
Right.
We did that. We did that in Malibu Canyon. We rented a ranch, which we still rent, and it has dormitory space and catering facilities. And for one weekend a year, we have Camp News, which used to be called APTRA Academy for the Associated Press Television Radio Association, which I was president of. And that dominoed into so many people wanting to come back for a second year. We partnered with Pepperdine University to use their studio, and we created an anchor camp. So we had a reporting camp and we had an anchoring camp. And similarly, we created the environment to be able to do the kinds of things a broadcaster would do. For instance, in more recent years, Stu Mundell would be in the studio as a helicopter pilot on a microphone, and he would act like he was in the helicopter, and he would interact with the anchors on the set, trying to go through a pursuit or a brush fire, a breaking news story. And we did that years earlier with Rod Bernstein, who was also somebody who did that for us at Fox 11. And so, we made it a point to create as much reality as we possibly could create. And it's been very successful over the years. It brings in people who have that desire, that fire in the belly thing. And we have seen people across the country who, not because of the camp, but because of the desire, the fire in the belly, have become great broadcasters. Susie Sa over at Channel 2, who's an anchor woman there, was in my first camp in the year 2000. We can point to a lot of people who came through, and they weren't successful because of the camp. They were successful because they had the elements and the desires to do what they wanted to do. So this was my way of giving back. Why did I do that? Because there were people who opened doors for me. We don't live in a vacuum. People open doors for us. They make it possible for us to walk through to another room. And there were people who did that in my life. Larry Lamont, who was somebody who made a difference, who was my news director at an all-news station in Fort Worth, Texas, became a bureau chief at CNN for the LA bureau and hired me to come out to LA, which is why I came to LA to work at CNN. I had no TV experience, but I had radio experience, and he felt I had the skill set to do what I needed to be able to do and do it well. Steve Edwards, who was on Good Day LA, who back in my college days was the program director of KTRH Radio in Houston, gave me my first news anchor job on radio at a CBS station there. People open doors. And so I felt like this was my turn. And I could do it either on one-on-one mentoring. I could do it in IMAX. I could do it, in CinemaScope and make it a big deal. And I did, because I could. And I felt like that was something that, could make a difference. It has made a difference, and we'll continue to do it. And we'll do it again this year in December again. It'll be the second week in December. And for people who might be interested, follow me on social media. That's where we announce when we start registration, usually around August and things like that. But it's a great camp. It's a great opportunity. I got to tell you something else. There's something about giving back and paying it forward. I was having breakfast with my son at a place here in LA one morning, and I went up to the cashier to pay the bill. And the cashier said, "Well, you don't have to pay, sir. You remember the guy that was sitting in the corner with white hair? He paid your bill. He comes in every week and he picks somebody in the restaurant and he buys them breakfast. He doesn't tell them. He just buys them breakfast." And you know what? That stayed with me. What a nice thing to do. It's just like somebody might buy coffee for the person in line behind them at Starbucks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just think, I think we could do more of that. I think we could do a lot more of things that bring us together than pull us apart.
Yeah. More than twice a year, probably less than 10. I'll just double the order, Denny's, the bar, wherever I'm at, and I'll just make the tip the entire cost of that. And look, I'm not a man of great means, but I've got 20 to 40, $100 even sometimes for someone just to give them just a little bit of a leg up that day, even if they don't notice, and I promise that they do. But it's you're potentially doubling, for a person at Denny's their tips for the day, if it's a big bill. And I can only do so much, but I definitely try to do that because I know whenever I got a big tip, I was like, man, this is going to be a good day. Like it gave me a boost the whole day. And so I've done this for quite a long time. And, I never, ever have heard about it. If I go back, maybe I get treated differently, but I don't think so. And I do it because I find that to be a good way to plant seeds of joy, seeds of a better day. That's kind of what I think about it.
Well stated.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, I don't want to take any more of your time. We had a great chat. I can't wait to do it again. Let's for sure get together sometime in the near future here since we live so close. Anything in closing? Everybody go check out Hal's book. You know what I always say, buddy read, buy 2, start a book club. I happen to know the guy. Probably would talk to you about your book club, so.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. And I would like to stay in touch. And I think
likewise.
I think that anybody that wants to follow me along, I'm Hal Eisner on all social media platforms. And the book is available through Amazon. It's available through Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, a whole lot of different online stores. And, if you go into a store and you ask for it and they don't have it, just ask them to order it for you. They can do that. And I hope you'll read it. And I hope that you'll give me some feedback. Let me know.
It's quite a life, Hal's led, everybody. Hal Eisner, everybody. I'll say goodbye to you, Hal, in a second. Everybody else, I'll see you later.